Hi, this is International Master Adam Hunt, recapping with mine and my commentating partner Danny Gormally's selection for the game of the tournament from this year's British Chess Championship. Firstly, we should congratulate the two winners of the event. For the men, Mickey Adams on his 7th title, and British Women's Champion is Ivanka Huska for the 9th time. So congratulations to both of them. The game we've chosen as the game of the tournament, there were a few contenders, but the one that stood out to us was a game played in round 3 by Grandmaster David Howell, who finished second, and International Master Lauren da Costa. It was a really interesting fight between the two players, and there was really what we thought was a really interesting strategic idea along the way. So I'll take you through the game and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So the opening was in English. Knight f3, knight f6, c4. And Lauren chose to play with a Fianchetto queenside bishop, so b6. Knight c3, e6. e4, bishop b7. And perhaps for the uninitiated here, slightly surprising move by David. He played the move queen e2. This has all been seen before actually, and the idea is to try and force some sort of concession for black if he wishes to stop the move e5. So for example, something like d6 is probably not exactly what black wants, and there's no other really serious way of stopping this pawn push. Lauren chose actually the most popular move in this position, to play c5, just to clamp down on the d4 square. Another move worthy of consideration, and my engine's top move, is bishop to b4, which has also been played a couple of times. But Lauren chose c5, and David played e5, and again Lauren chose to play the most popular move in this position, which is the slightly surprising looking knight back to g8. I guess black doesn't really want to put the knight on g8 if he can possibly help it, although as soon as it goes there, as we'll see later, it has ideas of coming back round into the game via e7 and f5 or e7 and g6. The reason why knight to g4 is perhaps not so good is for a similar reason in the game, in that after d4, which is a really strong move, takes, we can see that the knight on g4 has to move again because of the threat from the queen. So knight h6 is basically almost the only move. You can see a predecessor game here of Wei Yi's playing white, which went knight h6, bishop h6, gh6, and I think if we just stop there, it would be fair to say that white would be quite happy with the way that the opening's gone, with the damage to the black kingside pawns. Although the two bishops do provide some compensation. I'm a bit concerned about this square for black, and this square for black in particular. Actually, the game didn't last a whole lot longer. You see that Wei Yi, strong attacking player, castle queenside, and basically invaded on one of those two outpost squares, and then using a rook lift, brought his rook around, controlled the space, and well, it's clear to see that black is in huge trouble here after an exchange of knights and placing the other knight on d6. So back to the game. Lauren played knight to g8. David played d4 anyway. Takes, and knight to c6. So same ideas apply. White is probably thinking about whether or not he can use this square, and David comes up with quite an interesting idea here. He takes on c6. I guess you could take with the d pawn, but he took with the bishop. And then he played this move h4 again. So the idea of h4 I've seen before in the kind of French winnerware positions, where if we're thinking that this knight might be coming into this square f5, strong square, if sometimes black will therefore play the move at h5 at some stage, try and fix it there. And I think one of the ideas of h4 is firstly to play h5 himself, taking away that option for black, Second of all, of course, as we'll see later in the game, there's the potential for a rook lift up and over. And that just means that the knight won't sit quite so comfortably on either f5 or on g6. Or if black chooses to play h5 now, which I guess is possible, then he's giving up control of g5. And he's also making it quite difficult to castle on the king side because his pawn on h5 is under pressure. So h4, knight e7. You can see again there's been a previous game between two quite strong players. Gregory Oparin playing black, Russian Grandmaster, played f6 instead. And after rook h3, fe5, queen h5, g6, queen takes e5. Again, I think white's for choice here. He went on to win the game. So knight e7, h5, knight f5, and bishop to f4. So I guess immediately we can't play g4 to unseat the knight because of course of the pin down the long diagonal. But we'll see that this possibility might occur later in the game. Bishop f4, bishop e7, rook h3, and this is a really deep strategic idea by David. Well, I think it's a deep strategic idea by David. Danny was certainly impressed as well when he was doing the commentary on this game live. And the sneaky idea is that after bishop g5, which is a really sensible looking way of getting rid of the bishop, instead of exchanging it off, David plays the move bishop to h2, which looks really weird on the surface. You know, he's placing his bishop on a funny square. His rook looks perhaps a bit strangely placed. He can't immediately, of course, castle because of the bishop on g5. So in some ways the white position doesn't look all that harmonious. But after castles, David's idea is to sacrifice a pawn with h6. It may not objectively be the strongest move. I think if you were analysing this over with an engine, then it will prefer something like f4, bishop h4, g3, which is a similar idea to what we'll see later in the game. But it's very, very interesting. He's just simply looking to open some lines up for an attack against the black king. Lorin took it with his knight. Could he have taken it with his bishop? Possibly. If he takes it with his bishop, are we going to play g4 or are we just going to play f4 anyway? I'm not entirely sure. g4 certainly looks tempting. Then knight to d4, and the queen moves to attack the knight. The knight actually doesn't have too many sensible squares. It's probably going to have to sacrifice itself on this square. Something like this might happen. White gets two minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, so that's one possibility. As I say, there's also the possibility that David might just play f4 straight away. I think probably g4 is a better move. Okay, knight takes h6 was played. f4, bishop h4 check, g3. So interestingly, Lorin's idea there is just to provoke those pawns onto the black squares, and then just drop his bishop back to e7. David castled. Lorin played f5. Basically, if he does nothing here, g4 is going to happen. Next move, I would imagine. And then possibly f5. Possibly just move the queen, get the bishop out. The thing about black's position is he doesn't have an awful lot of counterplay for this kingside attack. So I think what he did was actually really sensible. The move f5 I think was a really smart one. It's quite slow black's queenside play. Something like rook c8 doesn't really doesn't really achieve a great deal at the moment. So f5. White is basically obliged to take that pawn, because if he doesn't, then this structure will deny white a lot of attacking opportunities. For example, the knight won't be able to come to e4, g4 will be hard to play, the bishop will look silly on h2. So pawn takes is forced, and probably here bishop takes f6 was perhaps a slightly better move than rook takes f6. My computer was giving something like g4 and queen e8, and it slightly preferred black, I think, in this position. Black's a pawn up after all, so it's likely to favour black unless there's something really powerful for white here. For example, here, if we would try and flick in g5, we could just capture this knight on c3 as an intermediate move. And if I take you back with my rook, let's say, then the knight will sit nicely on f5. So I think probably bishop takes f6 was a better move, but rook takes f6 is not disastrous by any stretch of the imagination. And David played g4, obviously threatening to win a piece immediately with g5, so something needs to be done about that. Lewin played rook f7. So a pawn sacrifice here for compensation, very, very interesting. Queen c2, exploiting the fact this knight can't move because the h7 pawn's hanging. So, is there an immediate threat? Probably not. It's probably just to go bishop d3. It's the next move. Queen f8 is actually a very good defensive move. David played bishop d3, and Lauren in this position took on f4, which is probably a mistake. It's probably more accurate to play g6 first. Rook takes f4 is definitely something that's coming into consideration. It's just with the pawn on g6, it's just blunting this bishop slightly more. So if I was to take on g6 now, what's going to happen? That would definitely be the first thing I would be thinking about. I guess pawn takes bishop, queen takes pawn check, and now what are we going to do? We're going to do queen g7, or are we going to do rook g7? We're probably going to have to do queen g7. And then if I was to take the knight off, how's this position look? I think maybe the only problem I can see with that is that after queen takes queen, rook takes queen, and king h7, that rook is unfortunately a little bit stuck for a move. So white would have to sacrifice a pawn to get it back out with f5. Take, and I expect probably take. Position's still quite unclear. Still got those big bishop pair, but the king is quite open on h7. So it's an easy one to assess. For example, I was thinking rook to g1. Though that chess base doesn't like it for some reason. Well, I guess black could even play maybe rook f1 check if you wanted to exchange some pieces off. Perhaps that's what Lauren was worried about, I'm not sure exactly. Anyway, he went for rook takes f4. Bishop takes f4, queen takes f4, check. King b1 and queen takes g4. So actually here we've got a really serious imbalance. We've got an exchange for 3 pawns. But the problem in the black position is that the king is still under quite a lot of pressure. I think David's best option in this position was to actually take on h7, and after king h8 just play something calm like queen d3, which just holds all his pieces together for the time being. And then perhaps if, let's say, I don't know, something like rook f8 happened, we could consider maybe bishop e4 just to get that bishop out of the danger. And all the time, if we can ever initiate this trade of bishops here, then a lot of the black queenside pawns, starting with d7, are going to become vulnerable. So that is a kind of positional key to this particular game. It's that bishop on c6 is performing a really, really important defensive task. not so much maybe controlling h1, although of course that is useful, but instead just covering the d7 pawn. David played rook e3, king h8, and now, as you can see, my suggestion here of just getting rid of that light squared bishop makes a huge difference to the situation. Rook f8, bishop takes, pawn takes. So although the d pawn has been removed, a new weakness has sprung up on e6. So rook e4, queen g6, rook e1. Of course, David has to be a bit careful of any kind of back rank tricks. Position is still quite unclear, I would say, as you would expect for an exchange with 3 pawns in balance. Rook f6 guards the pawn, and David in such positions is very good. He's very good at understanding what he needs to do in tense situations, which I imagine this really was for them at the time. Queen a4 was played, so you can see here the idea again that this sensitive queenside pawns are under pressure. I mean, he's walking into a absolute pin on his king, of course, but there's no immediate way for Lorin to exploit that. So knight to f5, that knight's been sitting on the edge of the board for a little bit too long. Queen takes a7 and pawn h5, giving his king some air. I was wondering if you could play knight to g3 or knight to d6 or something like that to exploit the pin, but I guess the problem is, if you do that, I can just pick your bishop off. And you don't even have time to take my rook in this position because you get back rank mated. So h5, a3, so again clever move, not something like queen takes b6 because now knight to g3 or knight to d6 would be a big problem, but instead just keeping an eye on that bishop on e7. Bishop to c5, holding on to the pawn, king a2, finally getting out of the pin, and this is probably, I would say, the close to being the losing mistake of the game in a really good battle so far, which is bishop f2. Basically, it just puts the rook on a better square. Perhaps he's done it because he wanted to break some of the pressure on the pawn on e6. He felt that was real danger, and also perhaps to support some sort of h-pawn advance. But the problems for Lorin are actually going to lie on the back rank, and David does a really nice job in a moment of using those threats. So rook to d1, king h7 is a good move to get the king off the back rank, queen a8, and that threatens rook d8, that's definitely the idea, and c5. He could have probably played queen f7, it would have been a more resilient defensive move, but I still think it's quite a tough position for black. c5, rook d8, and suddenly we can see that the rook and the queen combine really nicely along the back rank. Queen f7 now. Fortunately, the position now for Lorin is, if David plays it correctly, and coming up to the time control as well, so imagine they are under quite a bit of pressure here on the clock as well, was that after the move rook e2, which is a really strong one, the idea is that not only are we threatening the bishop, if the bishop moves we can maybe use the g file, but it's also, more importantly, that this knight is headed into the attack as well. So despite Lorin's best efforts here, he played knight g3, and after knight e4, this is another very powerful move. And as I said before, David is so good at, under such situations, especially under time pressure, at finding the best route through. Then actually Lorin doesn't really have a sensible defence here. For example, there's one variation that goes king g6. A lot of good options here for David. Probably the best one is knight takes f6 the best one. Can't remember if this was the one that I thought was the best. Rook takes f2 is another possibility here, and after rook takes, knight takes, queen takes. Perhaps this is a stronger defensive move, king g6. keeping a bit more tension in the position, because after knight takes e4, David has a very nice intermediate move, rook h8 check, and after king g6, queen takes e4 check, the king is being pushed forwards now, because rook f5 of course is not possible because of rook takes f2 and pin. But after king g6, queen takes e4 check, king g5, whoops, king g5, queen to g2 check. Lorin resigned in this position. If he goes any further forward, king h4 for example, then rook e4 check is curtains, because after rook here, again we can do a number of things by the looks of things. I thought we could just take on f2 with check and win a piece, but my chess base is saying that this might be even stronger, because of some sort of deflection of the queen, I imagine. So something like king g5, and what, rook takes f4, queen takes f4, queen h5, king here, rook here for example, we pick up the queen. So it was a really good game. It was a really good fight by both sides, but we really liked the strategic idea in the opening of playing around here, playing this idea of really deep idea, kind of already seeing probably what black is wanting to do in terms of exchanging the bishops on g5, thinking about how best to react to that, seeing that maybe his bishop wants to be on h2, where in order to play f4 and in order to play g3, he's going to have a bishop here and a rook here to guard that particular pawn on that square, and then be able to use that to generate a kingside attack. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I hope you enjoyed the British Championships itself. Congratulations to everybody who took part. Thanks for watching my video. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.